not the last one before we break for the electoral test, because we've got another exciting one next week. But this is there's quite a lot of business on here, so we'll be racing through these. Before I start, can I remind you to there's no expected fire alarm today, but if there is, can you please follow the fire and emergency procedures, leave by the nearest fire exit. Can I please ask you to use your microphone when addressing the meeting and switch it off when you're not using it, and please turn your mobile devices to silent. So, meeting starts with apologies. Are there any apologies? No, they're not. We're all here. And yes, indeed. Do you mind?
Just to say that David Haley is on his way. We were both in a meeting which I've left to come here, and he's finishing it, and then he'll be here.
Lovely, thank you. Declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations for any of the items? No. Okay, thank you. Minutes of the meeting on 19th of February and the 12th of February. Can I sign them as a true record, please? That agreed? Thank you. Questions from the public? We've had no questions received from the public. Thank you. Do I have any urgent business? I have no urgent business. Great. So I'll move to item 6. Now, this is recommendations from the Water Quality Select Review and our Cabinet response. Now, we have Councillor Ian Tuffin here today for another appearance at this august body. Welcome, Ian. Ian is the Vice Chair of the Growth and Infrastructure Scrutiny Committee, and he's going to introduce the report. So over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Leader. The Growth and Infrastructure Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I still have to read that. It never slips off the tongue. Identified water quality as a subject for a select committee review in 2023. During the select committee last month, we heard from Councillor Brian Delve, council officers, as well as representatives from the South West Water Environmental Agency and Tamer Catchment Partnership, the Ocean Conservation Trust, and National Marine Park, Plymouth University, and local swimmers to better understand the issues and opportunities in relationship to water quality. Following the evidence, the committee agreed to recommendations as set out in the report. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Leader.
Great, thank you very much. Kat Deaney's joined us. Kat, is there anything you want to bring to our attention before I ask Tom to respond?
Thank you, Tudor. Apologies for the voice. No, you will see in the response report there's a number of recommendations and we put a way forward on each of them. But just to feedback, we had some really great feedback from all the organisations who attended, and they thanked the Select Committee for their very proactive and forward-looking approach to this subject.
So, Tom, would you like to take us through the response, please?
Sure. Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Tuffin, and to Kat for coming today, clearly under the weather, so I hope you feel better soon. It felt like scrutiny at its best, really, that meeting. Really great range of speakers, national and regional experts, major organisations, but also local academics, people who swim in the Sound regularly, sharing their lived experiences of the water, and felt we had a really comprehensive, wide-ranging debate. We started off talking about some of the challenges and causes of water pollution, and of course things around South West Water and water companies generally came up, but we also covered things like misconnections, agricultural runoff, industry discharges. This really is a complex issue that needs complex, multifaceted solutions as well. And one of the things that really came across throughout that day is that shared commitment to what's right at the top of our corporate plan, that vision of Plymouth becoming one of Europe's most vibrant waterfront cities where an outstanding quality of life is enjoyed by everyone. And I think what we all agreed there on a cross-party basis is that if we're going to deliver on our ambitions of the National Marine Park, that the public need that assurance that it's a clean and safe environment for everyone to enjoy and for marine life to flourish. So at the Select Committee, we presented a memorandum of understanding between us, Plymouth City Council, the Environment Agency, and also South West Water, the most significant organisations involved in this topic, to really look at a partnership approach to driving this forward. That includes stuff around maximising programmes of investment locally, also creating ambitious Plymouth Plan for Water to radically, strategically look at water storage options across the city. And also something I'm most excited about is really prioritising green first projects as part of that space. As you'll be able to see from the papers, we engaged with a long list of recommendations, and some of those we've had to go to particular partners on. So some of the things, for instance, had to be replied to by the Environment Agency, but we really appreciate the feedback from the different councillors and look forward to signing the Memorandum of Understanding in the near future and moving this project forward. So thanks again.
Members, anything else you want to add before we go to the vote? I mean, it is distressing, obviously, to see things that don't belong in Plymouth Sound bobbing around. I mean, there's been a couple of Tory MPs in there lately, up there last week that I saw, who really don't belong there. But other than that, I mean, this is a very important subject, and it's been tackled incredibly seriously by the Scrutiny Committee. But as you said, Tom, again, scrutiny at its finest, really. So the recommendations are on pages 27 to 28. And there are quite a lot of them. I'm going to put them to you, our responses to you, if that's all right. We are thanking the Select Committee for their work and proposing those 16 recommendations. And we're going to support the responses to the recommendations, if that's all right. That's what our job is today, okay? So, and also, Tom, the Memorandum of Understanding to enhance the relationship with South West Water and the Environment Agency, and delegate the final review and sign in to Tom as the Cabinet Member for Environment and Climate Change. So, can I see all those in favour of that, please? Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. And once again, thank you. And this may be your last appearance in front of this august body before you're in your well-earned retirement. Can I say personally, you've been on this, round this table as a member of the Cabinet and as a member of the Scrutiny Partnership, and you've always given of your best to the council, to the city, and to your constituents, wherever you have represented. And Ian, we're going to miss you hugely. Thank you so much for everything you've done for Plymouth.
Thank you for those kind words, Leader.
So if I may move on to item number 7, which is our commitment to equality and diversity. Now, Chris Penberthy is here and is going to introduce this. Giles and Sarah will be here as well to support the report. But firstly, Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leader. And Councillor Penrose is just going to move to the table as our welcoming city champion as part of our team today.
Angela, welcome to the Cabinet, and thank you for attending today.
So over the past year, the Council has maintained its commitment to promoting equality, reducing inequality, supporting diversity and encouraging community cohesion. The diversity of our city is something we're immensely proud of and is one of our greatest strengths. In fact, since 2012, Leader, when we took administration that year, we have been working hard on a welcoming city agenda. As a public sector organisation, we have a duty under the Equality Act 2010 to publish information on our equality, diversity and inclusion activity, and to exercise due regard to equality when we make decisions. This paper sets out some of the activities that the Council has undertaken during the past year to reduce inequality in the city and in our own workforce. So some examples of that is that we've become a white ribbon accredited organisation as we seek to tackle VORG, delivered training to employees on reporting hate crimes. We've set up the cost of living task force to coordinate a citywide effort to provide support for Plymouth families impacted by the rising cost of living, because we know that many people with protected characteristics are more likely to be in the vulnerable families affected by the cost of living crisis. We've also undertaken to treat care experience as if it were a protected characteristic through a council motion. Under our public sector equality duty, we must publish one or more equality objectives every 4 years. And we ran a public consultation during February of this year and consulted widely with our diverse communities and our partners. This paper outlines our suggested equality objectives for 2024 to 28. These objectives will help us to shape the services we provide, ensuring that diversity and inclusion is integral to everything that we do. And I'd like to thank Councillors Lang, Hayden and Dan specifically, as the 3 of the 4 objectives relate specifically to their areas of responsibility. Equalities and diversity doesn't sit in a little silo. It's very much a shared council responsibility. An action plan, once these are agreed, will be developed over the next couple of months to illustrate in more detail how the Council intends to work towards delivery of the objectives in 24-25, and that's a live action plan that will react to changes. Things get knocked off as they're completed and more stuff added during the course of the year. One of the programmes of work we're committed to delivering on is the Welcoming City programme, and I've already announced Councillor Penrose as our champion. She's been working hard over the last few months, getting out and about in the community and working with me, not only on developing these objectives, but on looking at how we move forward to actually becoming more of a welcoming city and tying the work we do in with other key partners such as Destination Plymouth's new marketing campaign. So Angela is really key to us moving forward, and I'd like her to just have a few moments to talk a bit about the Welcoming City activity and the work that she's doing.
Thank you very much. Well, I would like to begin by thanking Councillor Penberthy for all the work he's already done. I've become so aware over this of the last few months and been amazed at what has already been put into practice. And so I'm really proud, and I'd like to mention that when I do go about, there's always a lot of councillors already there, so I know that lots of us are involved in this already, and I look forward to continuing with the work along with other councillors. And I'd really like to thank the council officers who are contributing to this area of work. A senior policy and intelligence officer left, but I've been so impressed by the thought and the energy and the effort that Caroline, Ma and Sarah Gooding and Lucy Davis have started to put into this, and the way they're really supporting me and helping me think it through. So over the coming months, we have lots of plans to build on these foundations, to listen to the communities and encourage our partners in Plymouth to make decisions and deliver services which reflect the diversity of this city and that benefit every resident. We've set up a network of critical friends, organisations in the city with whom we can share and develop ideas and good practice, and this is already proving really worthwhile. And we had a good response to the consultation. People responded very positively and with really rich feedback, and it provided a good opportunity, I think, to get our little group together really thinking about what's important about these different issues. And you'll see in the report we did respond and make changes to the objectives, so we did reflect that. So I'm looking forward to continuing to meet people in the community as much as possible and listening to them. I'm being invited to all sorts of extraordinarily lovely, interesting meetings and getting to know lots, finding my way into networks I expect you know we have the monthly international dinner, which is a very successful way of getting into different groups and bringing people together, even when we are aware that tensions do exist. So I'm now looking forward to working with the team on the action plan and continuing the work with Councillor Penberthy and the communities we all serve. Thank you.
That's terrific. Thank you, Angela, very much indeed for that, and thank you for the work you've been doing in your role. Jemima.
I wanted to say a very quick thing about the care leaver section of this and how proud I am that we passed our motion and how it's translated into the documents that are before us, because last month, not in Plymouth, I hasten to add, a housing provider put out an advert for a property and specifically said that care leavers couldn't apply. So when people could kind of question why we passed that motion, I think it's really important to understand the kind of level of discrimination that still does exist, hopefully not in Plymouth, but in other places around care leavers. And that's why it's really important that this is set in stone in our council's policies. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks very much indeed. I mean, there's been a lot of nonsense from Michael Gove about inclusion and diversity. Anybody'd swear that the equal pay battle is finished, that equality for women is finished, that equality right across the protected characteristics is over and done with and all the battles are won, and that's just nonsense. But the idea that councils are spending millions of pounds on this is also nonsense. What we're striving for actually is to make sure that we mainstream all this work and that it's part and parcel of what we do every day. And what's wrong with that? We represent the whole community in here, not just bits of it, at least we strive to. So we won't be apologising for that, and certainly when we celebrate the diversity of our city, we welcome it, makes us stronger. Chris, is there anything you wanted to say to finish, or Sarah's online as well?
I'd like to echo Angela's thanks both to officers and also to the communities out there that we work with. We couldn't do anything in this arena without people working with us. And I'm also really encouraged to see major employers in the city also beginning to come round and I look forward, I think in the summer, to hosting a Welcoming City Summit for employers, so that we pull the EDI leads in the city together to start building a whole city approach to this. So it's not just EDS anymore, and it's very clear in our objectives that's what we're doing. And I would like to pick up on what you just said about Mr. Gove. I think I've said on a number of occasions since he talked about our armies of staff and millions of pounds and discredited programmes, we have a very, very small part of lots and lots of people's time, because this matters to us across the council. He can come here and interview the department because he'd sit in an empty room. He could talk to people about our discredited programmes and find that actually he won't find any, and he won't find us wasting money. The money that we do invest is very small and has massive outcomes. And actually there's more money invested in equalities, diversity and inclusion in this city from partners across the city supporting things than by us. We facilitate and enable, and I'm very proud of the work we do, and I'm very happy for him to come and accuse me of being woke and accuse me of wasting money, because I can actively demonstrate that here in the council this is part of the warp and the weft of the way we do work. And all that we've done with our objectives is continue to make sure that that is bedded in for the next 4 years. In 4 years' time, no doubt they will change because we will have moved on. But some things will still be there because some things will still matter. But I would like to say thank you to everyone who's got us to this point and is going to take us on to the next stages.
That's well said. Okay, everybody. Now we've got 2 recommendations on page 49 of your papers. One is to note the progress set out in our commitment to equality and diversity document, and also to endorse the new equality objectives for 24-28, which Chris highlighted in his introductory remarks. Is everybody happy with that? All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's great. Thanks, Chris, and thank you, Angela, for attending today. I'm going to move on now to item 8, if that's okay. That's the Complex Needs Alliance contract. Now, Mary Aspinall, Councillor Mary Aspinall is the Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Social Care. She'll introduce the report. We've got Emma here, who's the Interim Head of Commissioning, and Matt, I think yes, Matt is with us in spirit and online. So that's great. So without further ado, Mary, the floor's yours.
Thank you very much, Leader. The paper that's before you provides an update on the work of the Complex Needs Alliance and the work it's done over the last 5 years, which is a partnership of services with the council, which the council supports, and it supports some of our most vulnerable citizens. The Alliance supports those over the age of 16 who have needs in relation to homelessness, who may also have needs around substance misuse, mental health, offending, and are at risk of exploitation. As well as our partners working together collaboratively, this partnership also crosses 3 areas of the council: strategic commissioning, public health and community connections, which has very close links to the direct delivery of the service on a daily basis. I would like to thank everybody that's been involved with this to make it such a successful contract and a successful partnership. It's not always been easy, but we've got through it, and that's really got to be a thanks to officers that have taken part. But I would like now to hand over to Councillor Pemberthy for his insight into the work of the Alliance, because he's been involved since this inception, and the majority of it is in his portfolio. So it's really apt that I hand over to Chris. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mary. And the majority of the work sits in my portfolio. The majority of the money comes from Mary's. So thank you, Mary. While the contract for the Alliance has been in place since 2019, actually the work of the Alliance goes back much, much further. In 2012-13, we started talking about the 28 contracts we had with a whole variety of organisations delivering disjointed and quite often duplicating services to the homelessness sector in the city. And we said, we're spending lots of money, but are we really seeing a change? What do we need to do to change the life experiences of people experiencing homelessness? And as we began to talk, it wasn't only about aligning contracts, it was about changing the way that we worked, because people are homeless quite often for a reason. And when we start exploring the reasons, the trauma has quite often led to complexity of lives and an outcome being, at the very worst, rough sleeping. Along that route, there can be addictions, there can be relationship breakdowns, there can be debt, there can be all sorts of things that make life difficult for people. So we started at that point a long journey of beginning to pull together more than 28 contracts. There were 28 purely in the homelessness bit, plus contracts in drugs and alcohol and bits of mental health. Some key organisations and a whole range of others who worked with them in supporting people who are experiencing homelessness, and came up with an alliance that meant when we went out to tender, no one else felt able to compete. Because the alliance we have is a partnership working to goals and behaviours. The pitch for the money was based on that real clever way of working, where we sit alongside as equal members a range of organisations in the city. And I would like to pay tribute to Path and to the Zone and Shekinah and Hamos, Bournemouth Churches and Harbour, who are at the heart of the Alliance, along with our colleagues from Livewell, who together pull together and work with a whole range of others in the city to make the very best we can of tackling homelessness. It's a different way of delivering services based on principles of collaboration, sharing resources and expertise, driven by the needs of citizens, not the needs of organisations, working in collaboration, not competition. And it's really heartening to see how the Alliance services have come together, underpinned by a deep understanding of the impact of trauma and working hard to build trust. It's evidenced not just in the practical examples of the numbers of people supported, but also in being able to attract nearly £10 million worth of additional funding to the city since 2019 by bidding together for grant funding. Later on today's agenda, we are going to be, I hope, agreeing Plan for Homes 4, and the Alliance is one of the key pillars underpinning the work that we will be doing to tackle homelessness in this space, delivering safe, affordable and stable homes for our citizens. Over the next couple of years, we look forward to the Alliance continuing to evolve and developing our understanding of the impact working in this way has on the lives of vulnerable people. I think it would be fair to say that the Alliance is about to go through some major change. We have a number of people who are retiring after decades of service to the city. I'll say thank you to them on separate occasions, but I think in doing this we should really mark the dedication and commitment of those people in the city who've made up the Alliance leadership team and made sure that the work we do is the very best that it can be. And we look forward to welcoming some new people into that fold and continuing that work. But I'm going to hand over to Matt, who will pick up on some of the practicalities.
Thanks, Councillor Penberthy. So I haven't got much to say because I think the papers are a really good, take you on a really good journey through the Alliance and show you some of the stats. There's just a couple of things that I did want to say. A couple of them echo some of the stuff that Councillor Penberthy has already said. So we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that this was a really brave investment from PCC at the start of the Alliance. There aren't any alliances the size of this, delivering the kind of work they do across the country. And this has really given us the ability to kind of work differently with people and bring about best outcomes for people. Chris has already mentioned, sorry, Councillor Penberthy has already mentioned that working together as the Alliance has attracted significant additional funding. So we're seen by DLUC, Homes England, as a really, really good place to be investing money. So we shouldn't lose sight of that as part of this contract. By bringing all those contracts together, delivering the work in this way allows that to happen. The Alliance makes us very agile in the city, so we can respond quickly to funding bids. You'll all be aware that quite a lot of the time government funding bids come at very, very short notice and need us as a council to respond very quickly with what we want to deliver and how we'll deliver it. The Alliance gives us that ability, so that's really good. It's able to flex and change with demand, so you'll be keenly aware of the additional pressure and demand we have in homelessness services at the moment, and the Alliance has helped us to flex and adapt some of the way it delivers its front of house services to support our front door, which has helped kind of sustain numbers at the front door. This part around not telling your story over and over again, the way that the Alliance uses appreciative inquiry to understand what people's experiences are and how we can develop delivery alongside those experiences to improve outcomes for people. So the Alliance gives us that ability. As I say, in the paper, there's lots of stats and facts and figures about who's been seen by who and the numbers coming through the door. But I thought it was just kind of good to highlight those pieces, and I'll hand over to Emma.
Thanks, Matt. So I get the technical contractual bit. So the paper makes a number of recommendations in relation to the contract, which underpins the Alliance and enables it to work in the way it does. So we're seeking permission to proceed with the first of the built-in contract extensions for the next 2 years. and also to approve adding additional grant funding to the contract for both the 23-24 and the 24-25 financial years, because this will enable us to support our work in relation to substance misuse and rough sleeping. We also seek approval for a scheme of delegation for future decisions, given that we now know that funding will likely continue to come into the contract in this way. This will be with the relevant portfolio holders determining whether to proceed with any future contract extensions based on their knowledge and understanding of the performance of the service. And for the Strategic Director for People to approve any contract variations up to £3 million, again with the consultation of the relevant portfolio holders. This will ensure we continue to be really agile in securing additional grant funding to enable us to continue to support those with a range of really complex needs in Plymouth.
Okay, you were here in 2019, and I think then we said it was a big day at the office, and it was a result of like a lot of hard work in the prep, bringing all those, I'll call them vested interests. Sometimes vested interest sounds like really dodgy and everything, but what I meant was that, like Chris alluded to in his introduction, there'd been a lot of duplication and a lot of competition in the third sector, which was unproductive for them and unproductive for the services, and ultimately unproductive for the people that we seek to help. So it was obviously worth striving for. And what you've laid out here in terms of the examples of the activity sort of goes to show just what a brilliant decision it was. But the brilliantness of the decision was surpassed by the brilliance of the organisation and negotiation that you and others did to bring it all together in the first place. So I've got to say thank you. Thank you so much for this, because it is once again testament to the everyday exceptional behaviour of local government and people who work in it. So we're not going into part two for this because it's kind of an extension of the contract. So it's not what the normal rules of all of that don't apply. So before I go to the recommendations, if I could ask Chris, is there anything else you'd like to say and someone up?
I think I thanked all the big organisations and leaders to make our work with homelessness in the city actually happen. Relies on a lot of unsung heroes. The staff at our partners and all the volunteers. And while we might be making big money decisions today, the people who see day in, day out, whether in our offices, their offices, or out on the street at 6 o'clock in the morning, the people who need most help, I think are absolutely amazing. The work that is done to support people off the street, people who come through the front door at New George Street, really worried about the fact they're about to lose their home. The people who are in bed and breakfast and temporary accommodation awaiting permanent accommodation, all of that support is done with such compassion and kindness that I would just like to say a very big thank you to everyone who is out there doing that work, because ultimately they are our front line. And I think they're a little special tribute to the Soup Run, who aren't part of the Alliance, but without whose work we would miss so much grassroots intelligence. So those volunteers who go out every single day of the year to make sure that our most vulnerable are fed, actually the Alliance would say that they need them too. So this is a big thank you to everyone who helps support our rough sleepers and our homeless accommodation, homeless residents into long-term permanent accommodation that they can sustain. That journey is down to their hard work. So a big thank you to them.
Thank you very much indeed. So the recommendations, which were in the supplement pack on page 2, to vary the contract, extend the contract, approve the rough sleeping initiative, and grant authority to Chris, I think, and to Mary to do the necessaries, and finally to grant authority to Strategic Director of People in consultation with the relevant cabinet members for any other variations up to 3 million. So, all is in favour? Brilliant. And let's hope, well, we don't, it's not hope, is it? Because we know it's going to happen, that the next period will be as successful as the period that has led up to this. Thank you very much indeed. I now move on to item 9. And this is the Integrated Sexual Health, Reproductive Health Contract Award. And we've got Kamal here. Welcome to your first meeting of the Cabinet in person. I'm going to ask Mary, Councillor Mary Aspinall, to introduce the report, and it starts on page 67. Mary.
Thank you, Leader. This report sets out a decision to directly award a new contract for integrated sexual and reproductive health services, and it's with the existing provider of the services. We did go through a really strenuous contract and service model and looking at the specifications needed, and we came to the conclusion, after they vigorously were checked against our values of quality and innovation, value, integration, collaboration and service sustainability, improving access, reducing health inequalities and facilitating choice, as well as social value. So they were strenuously gauged against that. But the contract, if we agree to award it, will enable University Hospital Plymouth, the Zone and the Eddystone to continue the work they started in 2017 to collaborate and provide an integrated sexual and reproductive health service, where the majority of the individuals can be met all within that one contract. So if anybody is attending for contraceptive advice, they can also receive advice about sexual health. The full range of services offered include STI testing, which is sexually transmitted infections testing and treatment. There's online services available and self-sampling kits. Contraceptive advice, free condoms for the under 25s, outreach service and other settings for young people. The overall aim of the service model is to improve sexual and reproductive health outcomes for the population of Plymouth, particularly in respect of young people. Chlamydia diagnoses in women aged 15 to 24, really important. And obviously presentations of HIV at late stage infections all need to be dealt with. The service model is characterised by the following: a clear focus on prevention and self-management, improving accessibilities, making sure that services are delivered in the most appropriate settings and at the most convenient times. An integrated front door with a central telephone number and online advice, information, self-management and appointment bookings. There'll be a clear focus on optimisation of new technologies and treatments, including online services. And there'll be a focus on cost effectiveness, where the service provider shares responsibility with commissioners for delivering services within defined budgets. The partnership is there to agree to work for up to 8 years, providing consistency and assurance for the health system and the people of Plymouth. The strength of the local partnership approach, commissioner and lead provider NHS with the voluntary and community sector, brings added value in the best place to identify the local needs, working closely with communities and local partners. So I hope, Leader and Cabinet, that you'll agree we've got the best outcome with this contract. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed for that introduction, Mary. Kamal, is there anything you want to add to that, please?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to say, it's another really great example of collaboration in Plymouth between University Hospitals Plymouth and then Eddystone Trust and the Zone, as Councillor Aspinall stated there, which, leading on from the alliance conversation, it's not a formal alliance contract, but it's a great example. And yes, and they deliver fully integrated service, so it's to the person who experiences it, it feels like one service between hospital and all the other avenues in which they can enter that. So that's why we're proposing this reduction.
So it's not a question of people from going from pillar to post, basically. It's a seamless service as far as the client is concerned.
Yeah, fully integrated, absolutely.
Again, you might be wondering why we aren't doing part two and the contract business. Well, this is a direct award. So, and it's more of the same with people we know and all of that kind of stuff. And there's new regulations about this anyway that came into force at the beginning of the year. So all of that's explained in the paper. All right. Is there anything anybody wants to add? Any questions anybody wants to raise? I mean, obviously it's really important, this health of the young people in particular, and making sure that we find ways in which reaching them. It's really important too, and services they trust and people they trust, fundamentally. So we've got the recommendation, which is on page 67 of the report. So can I see all those in favour, please? Thank you. Brilliant. All done. We'll now move on to item 10, if I might. Which is the Plymouth Economic Strategy 24 to 34, which it says here, I will introduce. Hello, are there some people coming in? That's marvellous. We're slightly ahead of schedule, which makes a change, I think. And it's one of my solemn duties to try and catch people on the hop if I can. It's very rare to catch these people out, actually, to be honest with you. You can work very hard. So, I'll just let everybody get sat down before I start. One for you, one for you, one for you. You're not joining us, Julia? Okay. All right. So, welcome, David, Lauren, Toby. Getting used to this now. I'll do a bit of an introduction and then we'll unleash you three, all right? Is that okay? And then there's some cabinet members as well. I've got to say a few things too. So we're about to refresh our economic plan for Plymouth. The last one, some of us are old enough to remember, was developed in 2010, was 2014. So this is the 10th anniversary. It was refreshed a little bit in 2020 before a few things happened. We mentioned them on a few occasions, but you know, COVID being one of them. So if you were tuned in to the webcast, I'm sure 3 or 4 people were, on Friday, you'll have heard me reflecting on how much that 2014 report actually ended up delivering. And if you weren't tuned in, I'm going to treat you because I'm going to do it again. We've delivered £365 million capital programme with a further 600 million of match. We've developed a £1 billion development pipeline. We've secured a rolling average of £30 million worth of grant funding per annum. As I mentioned earlier, and I've done this many times, £100 million to invest in economic development initiatives by 2026. We transformed the skyline of Plymouth with major developments at Royal William, Derriford and the city centre and the waterfront. We delivered major investment, including the Range Head Office, Land Registry HQ, the Barcode with Cineworld, and secured, of course, Barden's future here in the city. We've become nationally recognised for our cultural placemaking with Ocean Studios, The Box, Devonport Market Hall. We've championed inclusive growth, created a new economic development trust at Whitley, championed tourism with the launch of Britain's Ocean City brand, the Mayflower 400 events and development of the cruise businesses. We've also become nationally recognised for our work on the marine sector with Ocean's Gate, Marine Enterprise Zone, Freeport, and a marine and maritime launch pad. And we've developed more employment land than ever before with 11 direct developments. So we'll refresh our plan post-COVID and, as I hinted, a few other bits and bobs. Not least since last time we did this, the demise of the LEPs. But what we are saying is, with all this success, it's not a time for us to sort of radically shift course. But what we do have to do, because we're agile, I think I heard that earlier on from Councillor. No, it was Matt, I think, said we were agile, wasn't it? So we've got to respond to emerging national trends and opportunities like net zero, the growth in defence spending and the growth of our ports, and we'll continue to build on our sectoral strengths like marine. We're going to do this work in 2 stages. So first, a review of the evidence base, and a review of and the identification of priority areas. That's what we're going to do today, all right? And then we'll work with the Plymouth Growth Board and Scrutiny to produce 4 delivery plans during the course of the next 12 months, okay? And luckily for the Cabinet, we've nominated Cabinet champions to take these 4 things through, and I'm happily engaged in productivity and high value jobs, but we've also got inclusive growth, which Chris Penberthy is going to lead. We've got sustainable growth, which Tom Brose-Delve is going to lead. We've got civic pride and regeneration, which Jemima Lang is going to lead. And before I invite them to the party, I just want to tell you just a little bit more about the ambition. Hinted at it in the budget speech on Friday, but what we're looking here to do is, and this is like based on what we think we're capable of. This is a stretch, I think it's fair to say. And last time when we did this, it was a stretch, but we managed to do what we set out to do. So I'm very confident that the people in this room will be able to drive this. But we want to create 1,000 new businesses. We want to create 800 new jobs, grow the value of the economy by £1 billion, lift 3,000 people out of poverty, help 5,000 people get work, bring 50 vacant buildings back into use, support net zero city by 2030, build 500 homes, reduce those without formal qualifications by 50%, increase our productivity by 10%, and, just in case that wasn't enough, make the city more fun, with more cultural, heritage, sport, and that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do now is bring you 3 champions in, and I'll start with Jemima, and then I'll go to Chris and then to Tom.
Thank you, Leader. I want to start by saying that I'm so proud to be a champion of this part of the plan. I'm not a born Plymouthian, but I've lived here for a long time, and I'm not sure you'll meet anyone prouder of Plymouth than I am. I shout about it at every opportunity and in every arena, so I'm really pleased to have responsibility for this part of the plan. What I want my part of the plan to do is to build on cultural placemaking that we are being recognised for and doing well, so much so that the Arts Council has published a case study about Plymouth and how we do it. So I really want to build on that by working with the city's national portfolio organisations as well as the universities. I really want to see the box change perceptions of residents and visitors with even more world-class exhibitions and artists. And we're working on a new place partnership with the Arts Council following a visit from the area director recently. I really want to see the music scene and the nighttime economy grow and thrive in the city, supporting hospitality in Plymouth, which has been through a very difficult time for a variety of reasons. And I'm really excited to see the sport-led regeneration develop at Brickfields. I want this group to look at how culture can transform the city centre and build on Armada Way and other regeneration projects. And again, I'm really interested to see how the National Marine Park can really improve and grow civic pride. And underpinning all of this is really invigorating the Britain's Ocean City brand. I want everyone in this city to have something about the city of which they can be really proud, if not more than one. And I'm really certain that this plan will make that happen. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Jemima. Chris.
Thank you, Leader. I sort of remember back to the days when we started talking about inclusive growth and community wealth building as something that was a bit out there and no one quite really got it, to in just over a decade have gone from there to being one of the key parts of an economic strategy, I think is a really important statement for us as a city, because we're saying as we grow, we want everyone in the city to benefit from that growth, not just a few people. I think, Leader, it's such an ambitious target, but to say in a decade that we will set out to try and take 3,000 people out of poverty is, I think, just a real small bit of a massive piece of work, but it is so ambitious and it is so great. And we've been doing a lot, but we can do more. I'll talk about that later. But I think what we are recognising here is that it's the economics of the city that will make a change. And it's great to be associated with this piece of work. Interestingly, last year, or just over a year ago, there was a piece of academic research published on community wealth building, and they identified 3 models currently being used in the country. And yes, one was Preston, but the other 2 were Plymouth. That means that we were doing at least twice as much as Preston, purely on that academic piece of research. And for those watching, you'll understand why we like to point score against our good friends up in Preston. But this is a plan that will focus on those who've been traditionally left out. We're going to continue to ensure we have good growth, which benefits everyone. There'll be a huge focus on skills and workforce development, so people can first get one of the 5,000 new jobs and then go on to get better jobs as well. And we're going to be looking at those people with caring responsibilities and health challenges. We're going to build on the Plymouth Charter, and we're really going to push social value and local purchasing and better buying, not only within the council, but across the whole city, building on the successes we've already got in that area. We've got some fantastic community economic development trusts. We're going to carry on supporting them and seek for them to do more good economic development in the patches that they are working in. We're going to be supporting social enterprises and pushing our agenda as a cooperative city. And the strategy for that, as I talked about at Budget last week, is being launched in July on International Cooperatives Day. And we'll have a major focus on upskilling around particular NEETs and SEND cohorts. So Sally's work is going to be so vital to making sure that our inclusive growth strategy works. It's really ambitious. And it's great to see that 12 years after we started talking about it in Plymouth, it is now so integral to the way we work. So thank you for giving me the chance of continuing to champion this and working on this agenda.
It's a pleasure. Tom.
Thank you, Leader. You'll have all heard me talking about the Council's Climate Emergency Declaration and the Net Zero by 2030 goal, but I think it's really important to recognise that being a net zero city just isn't possible if we're not doing absolutely everything we can to also have a lower carbon economy that's fueling that. And that's something that can sometimes worry people slightly. You know, sometimes get right-wing conspiracy theorists talking about restricting freedoms or talking about halting economic opportunity. In actual fact, it's the opposite that is the case. So many opportunities to decarbonise existing businesses, whether that's through retrofitting, whether that's opportunities to rethink procurement routes or transport. But also as a city, we're ambitious about new forms of technology and investment and green jobs. So just to give a few examples of what's contained in this plan, some really exciting work around floating offshore wind. We mentioned earlier about us being Britain's ocean city. You know, what other city would be better placed with our innovative marine businesses to be leading on support for that. Doing a lot of work around heat networks, which is a huge opportunity, you know, multi-billion-pound opportunity nationally that will transform the way in which Plymouth homes and businesses are heated in the future. And also a lot of the work that economic development have started to do around support for green hydrogen at Langate, really exciting potential for fueling very heavy modes of transport. We want to make sure that we're continuing to renew our emphasis on sustainable modes of transport, whether that be our electric vehicle charging infrastructure strategy, but also clean port developments that I know the leader himself is very passionate about. This isn't only about net zero, this is about the wider green agenda as well, something that the team refer to as the restorative part of the economy. I think about a lot of our initiatives, the National Marine Park, the Habitat Bank, flooding resilience projects and the community forest. All of these involve a huge number of green jobs that we've got the opportunity to really expand. And underpinning all of that is the need to develop our green skills agenda to make sure that we've got the people and the skills ready to really kickstart that future economy with social justice and a just transition at its heart. Thank you.
Fabulous. Now, I need to clear something up actually, because as well as you three champions and me as champion, underpinning all of this is a sort of skills kind of narrative, isn't there? So, Sally, can I have you say something about what you're up to?
Yes, I haven't. I was going to try and be very quiet, you see, because we had so much. And I think I spoke a lot last time, but I want to say, and if you go to page 116, what I think is really important about the whole structure of this is that we have these 4 pillars, but we have this cross-cutting theme, which I think is the way to do it. This cross-cutting theme in terms of the skills for a skilled workforce. Developing, particularly looking at digital technologies, etc. But this is absolutely key if we're thinking in terms of our keys to our economic strategy and success, and success obviously for our city, but very much the success for all the individuals within our city. And what I particularly like is the reference that Chris sort of has kind of brought me in, is that this is about success for everyone. It's a really inclusive success for everyone to build our city and build our city together effectively. And it is very exciting. We've got so much opportunity here, so much opportunity to grow our skills within the city in order to grow our economy in some very exciting things that are going on, particularly in terms of the green and blue economy. So I won't say any more because I hadn't planned to, but I am very excited about this.
Thank you very much indeed, Sally. The other thing I've got to clear up actually, because I've mentioned this 3 times now. I did it today, did it on Friday, and did it to the PABC on Wednesday. Just keep saying 500 new homes. I mean, if you just have a quick look at what he's about to announce this afternoon, it's 5,000, not 500, right? So I just wanted to clear up that if you suddenly thought that I'd had a bit of a moment about ambition, 5,000 new homes. And, you know, when we say 5,000 new homes, that'll be the minimum we're actually trying to achieve here, by the way. All right, but more of that in a bit from Councillor Chris. Now, I've got all these experts here, so shall we use them? Is there anything you 3 want to add to what we've already said? I'm sure there is.
So I'd just like to give the 2 of our brightest young graduates who've led this work the opportunity, should they want to say a couple of things. They've been fantastic. So they may not want to, but I really hope very much they will.
Thank you. I can start. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to touch sort of quickly on some of our process in developing it, and I suppose the first thing to say is really, you know, our first step in the process was really reviewing and updating that evidence base, and really looking at you know, that last economic strategy back in 2014. We absolutely didn't want to throw anything out, but we definitely wanted to you know, be forward looking and ambitious and make sure that we could sort of build on that evidence base. And, you know, as you can see in the strategy, evidence and data is threaded throughout. And, you know, what's really interesting is that's really identified sort of the key economic opportunities for Plymouth, and particularly, you know, where, you know, that those opportunities can really lead to growth for the city, but also better living standards for individuals as well. You know, I think there has been mentioned some of those opportunities might be sector-based, you know, particularly, you know, we talk about marine, defence and manufacturing. That's mentioned frequently in terms of, addressing that skills need and the number of high value jobs that could provide, raising our productivity. But, there's also sort of very important opportunities around green growth more broadly, whether it's the sort of floating offshore wind or the heat networks, all of which, to meet that net zero 2030 ambition. I think it's just really interesting how a lot of that evidence base has really driven to sort of some of those opportunities, and through capitalising on them, that's economic growth for the city and better living standards for all of its residents. So thank you.
Sorry, I'm just going to build on what Toby said and circle back to what Sally was explaining about the interlocking pillars. So there's four main ones. Obviously, we've spoken about them and the skills which underpin. But it's important to understand that each of the pillars don't act independently. They kind of overlap and interlock, especially with the skills throughout them all. So working on one doesn't mean that you're just working on that. You're working on all kind of aspects of the economy. And then just very quickly, sorry, I wanted to build on the evidence base in just one line to justify why we wanted to go into each of the pillars. So the productivity and high growth one, as Toby mentioned before, productivity is a good proxy measure for living standards and economic competitiveness. So it's important that we kind of focus on that in the strategy. The inclusive growth, we wanted to grow a prosperous economy and make sure that everybody has their turn or everybody is included in that growth of the city. Sustainable growth, as Councillor Tom mentioned earlier, the climate emergency and the net zero and the green economic revolution. So that's a big thing. And then civic pride, obviously with the ageing population and that. It's important that we not only keep people in the city, but we attract them to the city as well. So it's a place to work, study, live and visit. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's great. By the way, I had the pleasure of presenting this to scrutiny, and these two were fantastic in that scrutiny panel. So thank you, and I wish you well with this because this is going to be a good one on the CV, I think, if I could say. Anything from you, David? Julia, are you okay? Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to say, the evidence stuff. I mean, if you think about what's happened to us, right, having been through COVID and all that, and seeing our business stock still rising faster than anybody else, and the GVA figures faster than everybody else. And then I keep looking in Centre for Cities data, and we're nowhere. And I keep wondering where they find their data from. Is it, under a rock or something, because they can't be using what we're using. The point is, Plymouth bounced back quite well from COVID, and I think in part as well, and I think we need to say well done on, what we did during that COVID period. That Resurgam Charter, for example, actually, which business community you mentioned, really bought into, has helped drive a lot of good growth in the city in that period, and inclusion, and bringing everybody with us, and everybody having a place, and everybody seeing their place is fundamental to this, the next phase going forward, I think. Anyway, got a couple of things to ask you before we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is basically, if you like, it. You've got to give some delegated authority to me. I'm sorry about this. But basically I'll get the final say, which I like, if I'm honest, but it'll be the last bit we do, because we're going to sense check this with a lot of people over the next 12 months anyway. And it won't work if we don't have the support of the business community, for example. So it's going to be, it'll be the last step of the way, really. So can you please agree with the recommendation on page 93 that the revised economic strategy, subject to final approval by me, please? Thank you very much. It's kind of important, we've got the LEP demise thing coming up. So, you know, the government announced they were going. So we've got to have kind of something coherent, as long with all the others in the LEP area. We've got to kind of know where we're going at the moment. And as usual, the government make an announcement and we've got to find a way of making the announcement work, which is what we're doing now. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you all again, not just for today, but for your work on it up to this point. And thank you. We'll see you again soon, I hope. I'm going to move on to item 11 on the agenda now. Another small matter in this incredibly busy cabinet meeting today. This one is snappily entitled the Plymouth and South West Devon Joint Local Plan 5-Year Review Report 2024. Now, Mark Coker is the Cabinet Member for Strategic Planning. He's going to introduce it, but Paul Bernard and Jonathan Bell are here. And who else have you got? Grant. Nice to see you. Did they not give you a sign, Grant?
That's my fault, Leader. Sorry.
I'm sorry about that. I really am sorry about that. But we didn't know you were coming. But next time, they'll let us know. And it's great to have you here. So, without further ado, Councillor Coker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. 5 years ago this month, the City Council, along with our partners in South Hams and West Devon, adopted the first ever joint local plan for Plymouth and South West Devon. At the time, this was only the 5th local plan to be adopted nationally, and perhaps the only one to fully meet the objectivity assessed needs for housing for an entire plan period. Since 2019, the JLP has been a great success for each of our 3 councils, enabling us to effectively guide and promote the development we want to see in our areas, rather than have this dictated to us by government policy or by planning appeal. This is a position we want to maintain, which is why this JLP 5-year review report is of such importance. It is a legal requirement for local planning authorities to complete a review of their local plans at least once every 5 years after they have been adopted. Additionally, national planning policy assumes that a local plan becomes out of date on its 5th anniversary unless a local plan review demonstrates that its policies remain effective and up to date. If a local plan is deemed to be out of date, it is much more difficult for a planning authority to continue to use it as its guiding framework for development of its own area. In the absence of having an up-to-date plan, national planning policy would take precedence and there would be an increased risk of planning by appeal. I'm sure colleagues will therefore appreciate the importance of this report today. The 5-year review report considers a number of things. It looks at changes to national policy and legislation since the JLP was adopted. It looks at how well the plan has performed against key targets and indicators. It considers changes in economic, environmental, and social circumstances, and it factors in the latest demographic data. Although the whole plan is considered in the review report, there are 2 particular aspects that merit being highlighted here today. Firstly, national policy dictates that a 5-year review point, a local plan's housing requirement is out of date and instead sets a new housing requirement for the area based on the government's standard method for assessing local housing need. This becomes then the basis for the 5-year housing land supply calculation and housing delivery test. The only exception is where a planning authority can demonstrate that their local plan housing requirement is sufficiently close to the number generated using the standard method. Colleagues, the government's standard method, based on an algorithm, is quite frankly a nonsense. It uses 2014 demographic data as a basis for its projections. Even though we have had 8 mid-year population estimates since then, as well as the 21 census. It also applies a completely arbitrary, unevidenced 35% uplift to the top 20 cities in England, which includes us, totally ignoring issues such as deliverability and urban quality of life. Our JLP is based on proper evidence, tested and supported by planning inspectors. Yet the government prefer to use a completely arbitrary and unevidenced methodology that penalises urban areas. I will leave Cabinet colleagues to reflect on the possible motivation that the government might have for this. In the 5-year review report, we therefore set out a case for continuing with the JLP housing requirements and not applying the government's flawed standard method. Secondly, the 5-year review report addresses the issues of the time-limited Plymouth Airport safeguarding policies. The JLP has 2 safeguarding policies which are linked in the 5-year review of the plan. At the time the JLP was prepared, 5 years was considered to be a reasonable period for a private sector business plan to be finalised and put into action. However, no one could have anticipated the series of global events that have occurred since 2019, including the COVID-19 pandemic, the Ukraine-Russia war, and their associated economic shockwaves seen in spiraling energy prices and inflation. Additionally, more time is needed to allow the complex negotiations and actions relating to land ownership to be concluded, as this is crucial to the deliverability of aviation in the future. The 5-year review report therefore sets out the City Council's position to continue to safeguard the airport site through the planning process. Colleagues, West Devon Borough Council and South Hams District Council have already approved the JLP 5-year review report, and I am delighted today to recommend that we do the same. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Right, Grant, Jonathan and Paul, have you got anything that you'd like to add to that introduction?
It's hard to improve on Councillor Coker's very eloquent case for the 5-year review report. I suppose the only thing I would highlight is in a world where we did not do the review, it would become very difficult to use the local plan effectively. And so that's really the basis for it. And that obviously affects things like the 5-year housing land supply, the airport and other matters.
So interesting what you said there about the shenanigans with the numbers. I mean, you know, I think there's a lot of politics being played at the moment with things like Green Belt and all of that stuff. I can't think of any reason why a bunch of Tory MPs in rural areas would want to force urban areas to take more housing and less in the rural areas. Can you? But there we are. You put it much more subtly than I did, but you know me. Thing is, I want to spell out loud just for a few people who keep pestering me every single day about the airport. There's no need for a petition. We've just done it today, right? We've just extended it today, the protection, so there is no need to keep posting stuff on Facebook every day to councillors, please. We've got the message. We had the message before. Again, people who might have an interest in politicising this, you can draw your own conclusions about why they want to do that. Point is, they didn't do it when they had the chance to do it. We've just done it. Okay, so we're about to do it when we vote. Is there anything any members want to add to this? Sue?
Oh, well, because I actually went on to the JLP yearly review meeting that we had the other day with councillors from across, you know, all of the local authorities. And it's really interesting now that because of the JLP, how many local councillors actually ask a lot more questions about planning, about transport, about climate, about growth, about retail, about economic land. And I think the one thing the JLP has done has given us a really strong voice that all those local authorities can use really positively. So it is really good that we are extending this and reviewing this today.
I suppose the other thing is, I mean, we're going to talk in a minute about the Plan for Homes 4, and we alluded to our ambitions in the economic strategy. I mean, what we're agreeing today doesn't impact adversely on our ability to deliver the housing targets that we've got for the city already. There are other things that impact on the effect of our ability to do that. Viability, you mentioned, low wages versus prices and supply being just a few of them, right? But, you know, the point is we can proceed today on this in the knowledge that this does not harm our ambitions in any way, shape or form. And that's really important to stress, I think. We were already quite ambitious in terms of the housing numbers we want to achieve in the JLP area. You know, our ambition in that regard remains undiminished. So I think it's important that we say that out loud. We're probably going to say it again in a minute. You can say it right now if you like, but promise me you won't say it again in a minute.
No, I was just going to say, Leader, that actually having the JLP enables us to deliver on the housing that we need, because it allocates the sites and means that we know strategically where we're going to build and enables us to build the partnerships to bring the housing forward. So having this renewal is really important if we're going to achieve anything.
Okay. Right. Well, you don't want to say any more. We don't need to say any more. Mark, do you want to say any more before I take this to the vote? Is that okay then? So the recommendation is on page 152. So that's to approve the 5-year review report as a statement of the council's position in relation to the joint local plan and as a material consideration for planning decisions, right? So this is a really important vote. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. And once again, thanks to the team. Not easy work, very with everything else that's going on at the moment. But we thank you for your professionalism and skill as always. Thank you. I'm going to move on now, if that's all right. Item number 12, I think. Yes, item number 12, Plan for Homes. Now, Chris is going to introduce this. Chris Penberthy is going to introduce this as a cabinet member for, amongst other things, housing. We've got Paul Barnard here still. Matt Garrett joins us again online, excitingly, still here. The internet's still working, so we're very, very grateful for that. Neil's here. Neil Mawson, our housing delivery manager, is here with us as well. So, 5,000 new houses. Did I mention that? I might have mentioned that. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Leader. The headline target for the next 5 years, not 10 years. So in 10 years, 10,000 plus, I think, is probably much more where we would be targeting. One of the things I'd like to start by saying is that Plan for Homes has been a very successful initiative that the council has been working on for a number of years now. Thanks to Councillor Larry on my right here, we got Get Plymouth Building morphing into Plan for Homes 1 back in 2012, 13, 14. 10 years later, we're on iteration 4 of work programmes that should have each lasted 5 years. And I think what that shows us is the amount of work that's been done by officers and partners in delivering on the processes and the objectives that we've been setting, that mean that we keep on needing to renew and update in a more substantive way than tweaking the action plans. And this year, we've taken a whole council approach to this, and I'd like to pay tribute to Tracy and everyone she's brought round the table, because to have everyone sitting round the table for the first time as we do Plan for Homes, I think is meaning that we have the most holistic approach to housing we've probably ever had as a council, and I think that is really positive and bodes well for the next 5 years. And yes, the headline is a minimum of 5,000 homes in 5 years, and that's a rolling target that we have now set. Councillor Larry is giving me a snide look because his target was 1,000 a year, and I've sort of relaxed it, but sort of not, because I said a minimum of 5,000. But we have delivered more than 7,500 new homes since 2013, and that includes the whole COVID and post-COVID periods of real low building, and the time we needed to start up from very low housing levels to building at more volume. So I think a credit to everyone involved in house building in Plymouth. We're not building houses for building houses' sake. We're building houses because the council's priorities are meeting the housing needs of people in Plymouth. When I'm working with Matt, we're looking at housing waiting lists, and they're high. And more than 8,000 people are waiting for a home. On Band B, in fact, I've just emailed Matt something today, someone who's been on Band B for well over, if it's not Matt, it's in the drafts waiting to come to you, looking a bit puzzled. On Band B for more than a year, because even in that intense housing need, there is just not enough housing stock in Plymouth. It's why we've got hundreds of households and families in temporary accommodation. It's why we don't have enough yet suitable accommodation for older people to downsize to, releasing their family homes back into the market. It's why we need to work on a private rented sector where landlords are bailing for lots of other reasons, and we need to keep them there, because without the private rented stock, we have yet more demand on an as yet unfulfilled need for more build in affordable housing. It is at every tenure and at every price point that we need quality homes in Plymouth. And yes, I do mean expensive homes for people to buy, because Mark wants their council tax from high grade housing, because that is part of what delivers on the need for us to have a budget. And the housing stock in Plymouth isn't well balanced. We're far too many A's and B bands and not enough of the EFGs. So we've got to do work across everything. And in the next 5 years, we're going to be tackling homelessness by looking at how we provide all of those other sorts of housing areas of support. And I'm really proud that we're able to do that in support of the joint local plan. I'm really proud that we're able to do it in support of the Alliance. I'm really proud that we're able to do this in support of the private rented sector and of owner-occupiers in the city. I'm proud that we're able to talk about what is the need for essential worker housing as we begin conversations with our partners, and as we develop an action plan, that's going to be in there, because we know it's a real need as we get people into the city to do those jobs in health. So we are building on our past work, we're building on what we've learned, and so we have 6 key areas of activity: affordable housing, market housing, private rented housing, supported and specialist housing, and partnerships, all with a cross-cutting theme of tackling climate change, taking positive climate action to keep Tom happy, because I don't want Tom on my back for doing all of this in a bad way. We've already identified 10 key strategic initiatives, but a whole action plan is now going to underpin this. because of the work that we've been doing in Tracy, that housing task force is now going to move from getting the plan from homes to today's cabinet. And I think that's a major achievement in less than a year, to developing the detailed action plans and really pushing forward to make sure those are deliverable and that the strong partnerships we need to make those happen are in place. And to do those, we need Homes England, we need our registered providers, we need the private landlords, and thank you to South West Landlords Association for working positively with us alongside all of those others, because together we can make a difference. And as I say at the end of the introduction to it's not quite a plan for a page, it's a plan on two sides of one page. You know, we want people to work in partnership with us to deliver the housing that Plymouth needs, and to continue to do the great work that provides homes, provides employment, and improves our built environment. So, Leader, this is a really important next step for Plan for Homes. I'm hoping that we might have scaled and scoped a 5-year action plan. If not, we'll be back in beforehand, as we have done with plans 2 and 3 and 4. But I really commend this to Cabinet.
Excellent stuff, Chris. Excellent stuff. And I think, as you say, to have this plan here so quickly after our election, when we saw house building in this city collapse from the height that you had managed to bring it to before, when we were at levels not seen since the rebuilding of Plymouth after the Second World War. We knew that we had a big job on our hands, which needs a big plan. And this is what we've got now, and will do after we approve this today. So that's really significant. Okay, any members of the Cabinet all right with this? Yeah. I'm going to bring in our team of officers to see if there's anything that they would like to add. Shall I start on screen with Matt? Is there anything, Matt, that you'd like to bring to our attention, please?
So thank you, Leader. It was only to echo Councillor Penberthy's words about homelessness. I think this plan is a real opportunity for us to deal with some of the needs we have around our temporary accommodation and our homelessness. And I think this plan really sets out our strategic intention for that. So I'm just really happy to be involved.
Splendid, thank you very much. I see Mr. Barnard is here.
Chair, I was just reflecting on the observations of Councillor Coker and Councillor Penberthy. The joint local plan set out the concept of sustainable linked communities, mixed use areas that have a vibrancy and meet the needs of the community across a whole spectrum of housing provision, as Councillor Penberthy said. But within that, we developed the award-winning Plan for Homes, which was able to bring forward initiatives within that framework, within the vision that we'd set for the city, within the strategy of the 3 growth areas that we'd set for the city. And we were then able to innovate through the way we released land to that the City Council owned and the way that we were able to disrupt the market. It was obvious that the only way we were going to change the game was that the local authority would step into the market and disrupt that market to deliver some of the enhanced housing outcomes that we've seen, whether that's veterans accommodation, whether that's wheelchair and accessible units that wouldn't be there if we hadn't have done what we had done. So I think the point about the relationship between the two, Councillor Penberthy drew out, which is that the Plan for Homes allows for that innovation because it works within that vision and framework. One might perhaps compare that to a deregulatory agenda, which the government are pursuing in terms of delivering housing. And I think we've taken the approach that we've set a vision for the city, a strategy for where we want housing provision to be. And by definition, where we don't want housing where it's not in sustainable locations, meeting our climate change initiatives. And then we're able to innovate through very creative ways of how we use land and funding to deliver those, what I call, enhanced housing outcomes.
Thank you. Neil, anything from you at all?
Nothing particularly, unless anyone's got any questions. Thank you.
I'll see if there are. Has anybody got any questions or observations? I mean, I think the thing to say is, I mean, we've done this economic plan this afternoon, right? And if we're going to deliver all those jobs, We've got our places that people want to live. And if Plymouth's going to feel the benefit, those have got to be permanent residences, really, not just something that somebody comes to for 3 or 4 days a week and then goes home at the weekend. So it's all kind of part of a circle, isn't it? To be honest with you. So, you know, whatever we do here, we know that of itself, the construction sector is really important to job creation in Plymouth anyway, but it's the support that this sector gives to everything else. And the constant cost of homelessness, not just in human terms on those people who are, but actually as to a local authority such as ours, which has to spend so much money trying to help people who really need help. So it's an economically, humanistically proper thing to do, I think. And I'm very excited that we're on the verge of another plan for homes and hopefully an award-winning one again. You've been mentioned a couple of times. Do you want me to throw you a sort of hospital pass and bring you in at this point, Tracy?
I'm quite happy to come in. I think there's been a huge amount of cross-council working on this plan, and particularly as money gets tighter and tighter, we have to be even more imaginative about how we can get that delivery to happen. Big focus on the city centre, as we all know, but those other growth areas in the city which are equally important. And as Chris says, it's important that we get all types of homes covered. I'm particularly pleased that we have really driven hard to integrate the work we're doing with the private sector, as well as the public stock, as well as the market housing. So this is a very comprehensive plan for homes, I would suggest, Leader.
Yeah, plenty of ambition, but more importantly, rooted in passion about delivery. You know, it's not just a pretty plan, you know, and we're going to look forward to seeing those action plans you talked about, because I'm not going to let you forget that you mentioned you might bring one to us, so that will be happening. Okay, Chris, are there any last words before we go to the vote?
Just to comment, Leader, because obviously we passed the budget last week. We have within that budget envelope the revenue costs we need next year and the capital that has already been identified in the capital programme. Further business cases might be coming forward, but those will only be once we've really done some hard hammering on them. So we have already got the resources necessary to start delivering this, and there are officers working on that as well. And on that basis, a real big thank you to all of the officers who've got us to this point from every single part of the council, to cabinet colleagues who've sat in meetings with me to talk about this. I'm thinking especially of Tom and Jemima and Mary and Sally, who've looked at specialist housing and net zero with us. Mark, who's given an enormous challenge on finance to help us get it right. This has been a team effort, and big thank you to everyone in the team, in the council and outside, who's got us to less than 10 months' work of a major review of our housing strategy, which I think is a real tribute to everyone, especially to the officers who've led on it. Thank you.
Okay, well, yes, indeed. So I'm going to put those recommendations, that recommendation to you now, which is that Cabinet support the development and delivery of plan for homes from 2024 through to 2029. All those in favour, please show. Fabulous. Thank you very much. And thank you all from the planning team and the housing team for your efforts. And as you said, across the council, I'm sure the finance department might have stuck their oar in once or twice in a conversation or in the due course as well. So thank you very much indeed. I'm going to move on now, if I may, to item number 13. Now, this is something we don't do very often here, but we do have the power to do, and then we do it when it's needed, which is a compulsory purchase order resolution. Now, this is for 1 Holsworth Street. Now, Chris, again, this is in your portfolio. You'll introduce it. Neil is with us still, and Rosie Gage is here as well, waiting patiently for her to come to the table. So, could we start with you then, Chris.
Thank you, Leader. And I might beg an indulgence to say I'll introduce two items at the same time, because otherwise I'm going to be talking about compulsory purchase twice.
In which case, Chris, that's fine. That's item 14, which is the project at 36 Whitson Cross Lane.
Indeed.
Okay, well, let's roll them both together then. Thank you.
So last week was Empty Homes Week, rather coincidentally. When we published this paper, it wasn't planned that way. But empty properties are wasted homes. Unlike some cities, we don't have large proportions of our housing stock which is long-term empty. So the ones we've got tend to be really problem properties, and the team work really hard to get those back into use, because an empty home can be a blight to your neighbour. It can cause your home to become damp or vermin infested. It can be the source of graffiti, vandalism, antisocial behaviour, and none of that is pleasant in a street. And we don't want people to be living next to homes that are in that state. Actually, we'd rather people were living in those homes and caring for those homes and ensuring that they were well used. So the team worked really, really hard alongside landlord or alongside owners to say, okay, how can we bring this home back into use? A bit later on, I'll tell you about a change we're making to that. But sometimes you get to the very end and people don't respond. They don't reply. They don't do anything. And they seem quite happy, bizarrely, to let a valuable asset deteriorate, lose value, and do nothing with. We've got two of those now that have hit that final point. The papers talk about the different reasons on each and the processes that have been gone through. But Neil, Rosie and the team have been working really hard with the owners of these houses to get the owners to bring them back into use. And we've now hit this big brick wall. And therefore it's quite reluctantly that I come to you to say, as a cabinet, please will you support us issuing compulsory purchase orders so that we go through the process of acquiring and then releasing those properties back into the housing market, because we need these two properties to be homes, and for the neighbours we need these properties to be well looked after and to be doing stuff in their streets. So up in Tamerton Foliot and down in Pennycombe Quick, we will be making a real difference to some people on a street if we can say yes to this today. And what we'll be doing is we're bringing two empty homes back into use. Hasten to say that since this was published as a paper last week and we went to press, someone emailed me with a property that we think was not on our list. We're now tackling on that. So if members of the public are listening and think, I don't know what's happening to that house next door to me, don't be afraid to say, are you dealing with it? And if we're not, we'll see what we can do. And if we are, I'll get the team to say, yes, we are. We won't be able to go into detail with people, but we will be looking and to reassure people. But let's actually make sure that we tackle empty homes in Plymouth. And please, if you have one the team are working with, work with them, because I don't want to have to come back to Cabinet to get permission to compulsorily purchase your property in order that someone can live in it. And so it's sort of with a heavy heart I come here today, having just agreed Plan for Homes, to say we need to do this, but this is all part of a Plan for Homes, that actually every home in Plymouth is a home that someone's able to enjoy. So the recommendations are there for both papers 13 and 14, and I think amount to much the same, but thank you, Leader.
Anything you guys want to add?
Only to say, as Chris mentioned, that bringing empty properties back into use, long-term empty properties, is very much part of Plan for Homes. And over the last 3 iterations of Plan for Homes, we brought hundreds of long-term empty properties back into use over that period of time. And this is an action that will go forward into Plan for Homes 4. And as Chris says, this is an action of last resort, and we would only consider taking this where every other opportunity to resolve the issue had failed. And in this case, we came to the view with legal advice that this was the appropriate action. I guess it takes a lot of time, of your time up in pursuing this kind of thing. Yeah, empty homes work generally is very intensive, time intensive in terms of officer, but also the timescales involved in compulsory purchase can be extended, as you'll know. But if this is the last resort, then we feel the need to take this action, regrettably. Okay. I mean, I presume Mark's going to be upset because there'll be no doubling council tax on empty properties, but there are other benefits. Okay, I'm going to have to take the vote on these separately because they're separate decisions. Although we've introduced the item in one go, is that okay? So shall we do the first one then? So that's the decision to issue a compulsory purchase order for number 1, Holsworth Street. So all those in favour of that, please show. Thank you. And then the second one is for 36 Whitson Cross Lane. All those in favour of that one, please show. Thank you. Okay, make it so, as they say. Thank you very much for your time and thanks for coming today. I'm going to move on now to go to item 15, I think it is. Is it? Yes, it is, 15. Which is me handing over to Councillor Sudan, who's going to give us a bit of an update on cost of living, for which she is Cabinet Member responsible. Over to you, Sue.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Leader, the crisis is not going away. Over the last few weeks, we've had 1,774 people have accessed the website. This time it's been looking for 3 things to do over the February half term, but still help with food costs is the second greatest need when they're looking on the website. So although inflation is coming down, food prices are not following, and we still are having a lot of families on low income struggling with accessing food. During the Easter holidays, we will again be promoting all the 3 things to do to make sure that families and households know that those activities are there. Next week, we're having a special campaign because it's Debt Awareness Week. We are aware through the work that the Citizens Advice Bureau have been doing that debt in the city is increasing as people are still struggling, as I keep saying, with housing, food and energy costs. And we're also beginning to use something which is new. It's called the Low Income Family Tracker, and it's been used very successfully by other councils. And we're going to start using it where we can actually target low income households to make sure that they're actually getting all the benefit, like housing benefit, pension credit, universal credits that they're entitled to, because this can make an enormous impact on people's everyday living if we make sure that they're getting all the income that they should. Even more so because we all know that we've just had a budget, and although it says that people are going to be better off because we've got reduced national insurance contributions, unfortunately for those on low incomes, because of the freezing of the tax thresholds, it means that their income isn't really going to go up and they're not going to be better off. And more people after April are going to fall into the tax bracket. So we welcome one thing that came out in the budget, even though it's a very, very short-term offer again, which is the 6 months additional support for the Household Support Fund. But it does mean that during the Easter half-term and summer holidays, well over half of this funding will go to low-income families to make sure that they get access to the free school meals vouchers again. But it's not sustainable because come the winter, when the energy prices will be going up again, we already know that. I don't know how we're going to support some of these low-income families across the city. And this is definitely, a government reducing grant funding to those families that local authorities can direct funding specifically to. The rest of the funding goes to people who have got energy debts or at risk of homelessness. So if you look at all the things that we've talked about today, Leader, about supporting people who are struggling, the withdrawal of this fund is going to have a massive impact on the support that the council can give, because we're not going to have the household support fund after 6 months. So not a lot of good news there. We just know that we're still trying to continue to support people and signpost them to make sure that they get help as quickly and as soon as possible. So that's it. Thank you.
Chris, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Leader. And Sue's taken away one of my announcements, because I was going to talk about the Household Support Fund, but also talk about the fact that we cross-party at a national level, and also working with partners in the voluntary and community sector to national level, have been lobbying for the Household Support Fund to be continued for 12 months. Continuing it for 8 months over the warmest part of the year might be deemed to be rather cynical, but also means that we can't spread and plan effectively, because come the end of September and into October, there's going to be a mass lobby again to get the Household Support Fund extended over the winter. And it's a lot easier for us to plan for a year than for 6 months. Rather cynically, I might say this is just a pre-general election giveaway to leave a mess somewhere else. The trouble is with cynical political gestures sometimes is that it's people on the ground who are hurt, and the Household Support Fund needs to be extended for 12 months, not 6, and we will be continuing to lobby for that with our partners. I also wanted to raise the fact that the council hasn't had to have an anti-poverty strategy since 1997. In June, I will be bringing a paper called Building Bridges to Opportunity, which will talk about the way that we are going to be tackling poverty. We're going to be using things we are already doing. So today, the local economic strategy, we've talked about how we're going to tackle poverty. We've planned for homes, we've talked about how we're going to tackle poverty. With the work that Council will be approving next week with the Net Zero Action Plan, we're talking about retrofitting and how we tackle poverty. We are doing an enormous amount, but we're going to pull it into one place and have it very clearly set out. Long-term aspirational changes that we want to make to the city to tackle poverty. But the cost of living will still be in there, because the sticking plaster is needed on an ever-widening gap. And it's, I find, rather shameful that we are having to go back as a city to bringing forward a formal council strategy like that, and we will be doing so in June, and because we do need to work on it. And I'd like to thank the officers who are already pulling all of that together and learning from it, because we do not want people in Plymouth living in poverty. We don't want children living in poverty, because that has lifelong impacts for them, for their health and their education and their employment prospects. And we do need to tackle it. And we're now having to be distracted by arguing for government support for basic needs, rather than us being able to concentrate on thinking about how we change things structurally. We need to use less sticking plasters, but sadly at the moment we're having to use more, and that really, really upsets me. But thanks to Sue for what she's done this year on the cost of living, it has meant that we've been able to concentrate at the same time a bit on how we think about tackling poverty on a longer basis. But we will do it, Leader. We will make it happen, and we will produce the next iteration of something that Rachel Silcox produced for us in 1997. She's promising to give me a hard copy of it, which I think will go onto my bookshelf when it arrives. But we will do it, and the reason we're doing it is that people in Plymouth need that support.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Sue. I'm going to move on to item 16 now, if I may, which is which is an update on dental task force dentistry and dentists. Kamal is still with us as well in support of Mary, who's going to introduce.
Thank you very much, Leader. We held the fourth meeting of the Plymouth City Council Dental Task Force on the 9th of February. At this meeting, the DTF members agreed that there should be a focus on three specific priorities. One, delivering a new facility in the city centre run by the dental school and aligned to the oral health needs of the city. Two, to provide additional funding to Plymouth City Council to enable it to enhance the oral health improvement, in brackets, prevention offer available within the city. And three, to use some of Plymouth's annual NHS dental underspend to commission new services for the high priority groups and those who don't have access to an NHS dentist. The Council's communication team issued a press release accompanied by a photo of the DTF members to ensure that there was significant and ongoing media interest in our work. Sadly, confusion continues to surround the budget for the high street dental provision and whether it is or isn't ring-fenced. We were told late last year that the ring fence for the 23-24 dental budget had been removed, and this was to cover NHS overspends in other areas. However, we have now been told by NHS Devon ICB that they simply do not know whether that budget is ring-fenced or not. So, there may or may not be in excess of 1.5 million available to spend on local initiatives at some point in the future. Obviously, we have made it very clear that we need the situation to be clarified as soon as possible. The DFT was updated on the dental schools planned for a new city centre dental practice. This work is progressing. However, the timescale for opening, originally thought to be September 24, may indeed need to be pushed back to early 25 due to an issue with their premises. For the first time, staff from the NHS Commissioning Hub acknowledged that the project represents very good value for money. It is anticipated that the dental school will be able to bid for funding to cover the very small amount of revenue costs from the expression of interest process that the NHS Devon ICB has put in place. With regards to the expression of interest process, local providers have been contacted and invited to submit proposals to provide dental care for looked after children. Whilst this is a very positive development, it is not the long-awaited expression of interest process that would have allowed the dental school to bid for the very small amount of money as it needs to support the development of the city centre practice. We still await details for that process. The dental school's offer of registration and free treatment for children attending primary schools in the city has now been extended to 10 schools. The update of this free offer has been slightly disappointing, so the council is offering to support and the initiative with targeted communications work. The schools in receipt of this offer to date so far are Mount Wise Community Primary School, Riverside Community Primary School, the Cathedral School St Mary's, which is twinned with St Joseph's, and Joseph's is twinned with them, Marlborough Primary School, Morristown Primary Academy, Whitley Primary School, Lara Green Primary School, Victoria Road, Millbay / High Street Academy and Knoll Primary. And for that reason, having talked with Councillor Creswell about the best time to send a communication out, we reckon that it's probably better to wait till after the Easter break, simply because youngsters tend to go home and dump their book bag down on the floor, never to be seen again until the first day of term. So we were looking to get a joint letter from Professor Whitton and myself. One of the things that may well be a problem if we're thinking about cost of living, etc., is that parents can't always take time off from work. So one of those things that I will be asking the dentistry school, is there any possible facility for a letter of authority to be given to a responsible adult to take the child. So it'll be Jimmy Miggins this time, or Juliet Miggins going to the dental school to see. So we want to really maximise that uptake. So we're going to have another dental task force meeting in April, and one of those things is we need to look at our terms of reference and make sure that they are still valid, and then looking to the new civic year, how we can refresh that. One of my thoughts were we perhaps ought to consider having somebody from Health Watch or one of those community, that represent the community on it, to make sure that we're keeping up with what is coming in concerns about the dental provision in the city. But although it's been a slow start, we have made some real positive things that have come out of it, even if it's getting people in the room and talking about it. And that to me is the major thing. So not as fruitful as I'd hoped, but we won't give up. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Mary. Jemima?
Yeah, I would say, I know Mary will say she feels it's been a slow start, but we're getting there. But I think it's important to remember that you're having conversations that weren't happening, you're applying pressure that wasn't being applied, and I'm going to say this, I know it feels like pulling teeth around the ring fence question, but I don't think there's anyone better than you or more dogged than you to get a result around that. And from my point of view, you know, I hope the communications can be improved around making sure that those parents and carers of those children in those primary schools take up that offer, and the move around our care experienced young people too, which is so important. And I think you've got to remember from the point from which you started and where you are now and how hard it is to get this issue solved, and you should be proud of what you've done to get as far as you've got so far.
It is worth saying the Conservative government's had 14 years to get us into this state. Don't forget that. We've had 10 months to try and start sorting it out. And we need a change of government to sort it out fundamentally. Of course we do. We need a new plan for dentistry. We need new funding for dentistry. We need a new dentist contract for dentistry. We need a load of things, and we need that change. Let's be clear about that. And people running around at the last minute trying to pretend they give a damn when they've done nothing but vote for these changes which have made things worse for 8 years. Okay, it's really important that you don't blame anybody but the government. Don't blame yourself. Don't be frustrated with yourself. You're making a lot of progress in very, very trying circumstances. So thank you very much for everything you're doing. Okay, thank you for that, Mary. We're going to move on to you again, actually, because you're going to give us an update on another project that we started this year. So item 17, I'm going to ask you to introduce that, please. And again, Kamal is here. If necessary, we can call upon you. We may do.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to update you really on our Ageing Well agenda. We had sort of thought about calling it Full of Life, but I think we're probably going to go back to Ageing Well because that's what it's all about. We agreed in Cabinet in December that the programme will respond to the growing proportion of older people in society and has an overall vision for Plymouth to be one of Europe's most vibrant waterfront cities, where an outstanding quality of life is enjoyed by everyone. And our tag onto that is, and where age is no barrier. We're looking at two particular groups broadly, those who are well and helping them to stay well, and those who are impacted on the consequence of ageing. The programme has themed reflections, the National Consensus on Ageing, Healthy Ageing and the Centre of Ageing Better Age-Friendly Community Frameworks are based on. So it's healthy ageing, using Thrive Plymouth, which is our programme for addressing health inequalities to support people to live healthily, which supports healthy ageing. Age-friendly places, accessibility, welcoming, safe and inclusive spaces and buildings. This is there's a sub-theme here of transport, outdoor spaces and also buildings. Participation and inclusion, ensuring that activities are financially, culturally and physically accessible as possible. Tackling ageism and ableism and considering specific groups who may be or feel excluded. To promote and to celebrate the contribution of older people. Looking at skills and employment, ensuring people have the opportunities as they age to develop a new skill and to pass on their skills and experience to others. We're looking at age-friendly employers, which is a national pledge. We're also looking at volunteering opportunities and then new skills and opportunities as well for older people. And lastly, communication, ensuring that communications across the city are inclusive and portray positive images of older people across the city. I'm sure all of us will remember the traffic sign that has an old person bent over. That's not how it should be. Additionally, the programme will link to the Housing Task Force and to existing partnerships in health and adult social care, and for assurance that around the needs of older people are being taken into account. So we've secured membership of the Centre for Ageing Better UK network of age-friendly communities, and that will be developing within a 5-year programme, and it'll be quite interesting to have their input and to make use of weekly peer calls and training and bespoke support. We're starting work on a state of ageing report that will tackle a baseline assessment for ageing in Plymouth. That will include data and intelligence and reflect all the programme themes. Asset mapping, what services are out there? What programmes and initiatives are already in place? What is working well? What do people value and what and who are our assets? Living experience and insights. We've learnt a lot about living experience, and that's what we want to make life easier for people who are getting older and what really matters to them. We want engagement. So we'll be making sure that the Plymouth Thrive Network is there and active with us, that Plymouth City Council team, Plymouth, is working with us. We're making sure that they know about this. Active to Thrive events with Sports England and Active Devon. Wellbeing systems, designed groups with members from health, adult social care and the voluntary sector. Community builders from the community empowerment team have a lot of information and they will be sharing that with us. And the steering group that we've got, and that will have membership from Age UK, Improving Lives, Plymouth Elder Tree, Plymouth Area Disability Action Network. Now we're going to pull a lot of this together. There's an annual International Day of the Older Person, and that's celebrated on the 1st of October. So we want to get our State of Ageing report to coincide with this date. Communications, I want to thank our communications team. They are brilliant, and they're making sure that we're making all those links out there. As the full details of the programme take shape, some projects and initiatives are already being progressed, including a pension credit campaign, which Sue has already mentioned, and to support the people of pension age who are eligible to claim this important financial support. And we're looking for the recruitment of an older people community builders to support that work. And that's really got to be a great start. And all of that is helping. We're working, making sure the dementia-friendly city side of the things that we do is all linked in. So an exciting time for those of us that are getting older, as each one of us are. And we hope to make sure that we are that city that's really attracting attractive life for those people that are getting older, so they can be part of our city. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mary. That's great. Kamal, is there anything you wanted to add to what Mary's introduced?
No, I don't think so. Mary's covered it perfectly. Thank you.
Excellent stuff. Right. Well, that's all great then. That's a really good, solid bit of progress there. A lot of work going on. We look forward to your next update. in a few months' time. Thank you very much indeed, Mary. So, since we're ahead of time, I've got another list for you for item 18, which is some good news, I think. I think it's really important that people understand that although times are really tough, what we've managed to put together here in this council is pretty remarkable and against the trend. For those of you who read the local newspaper or receive newsletters from MPs who don't live here, you might have noticed that actually that there is actually a lot of stuff going on in Plymouth at the moment, and a lot of it, and you've got to say this, doesn't happen by accident. I think people sometimes think it does, but it doesn't happen by accident. It happens by the long-term efforts of a lot of people, and these things take a while to come to fruition. Let me just give you some examples about what's been happening. Transformation, I'm going to call this transformational, because if we weren't doing what we're doing, we took a decision, and I took a decision, not this administration, but the administration before. We're going to prioritise growth, prioritise economic development, and hold that budget and hold that money, because actually it helps us with a lot of other expenditure. If you've got more people in work, that's less people that want to present themselves to public sector for help. It's quite simple, really. It's preventative work. But we continue, as a result of that, to be able to do amazing projects. So I'm just going to give you a little flavour of what we got planned for the next 2 or 3 years, if that's all right. And I think it's really important that people do know what's going on. We're plans for a £50 million civic centre residential development. We've got a £25 million Brickfield sports-led regeneration project. We've got an £80 million Brunel Plaza regeneration scheme. We've got a £25 million city centre Colin Campbell Court Community Diagnostic Hub project. We've got a £26 million Derriford District Centre expansion. That's not the Phantom Hospital, of course. This is the Derriford District Centre that's been built a few hundred yards down the road from that. Now, on top of this, we're planning, working closely with Babcock and the Royal Navy. We're maximising the unique opportunity for Plymouth from the most sustained period of defence investment in the city's recent history. And we'll really begin to capitalise on the National Marine Park with the lottery-funded Horizons project, which is now underway. We're going to be driving the Britain's Ocean City brand hard, as Jemima said earlier on, working with Destination Plymouth. And we're going to be working with, for the first time actually, with all 4 of our ports and we're going to have some major announcements about shore power and floating offshore wind, as Tom alluded to earlier on. Skills will be a major focus. We hope, in fact, we will be shortly making a major announcement on blue-green skills, very shortly. We're going to be focusing on green jobs, developing a pipeline of net zero investment. We're going to be opening up new major employment land opportunities at Ocean's Gate, at Langage, Sherford, Derriford, as I said, and the city centre. And we're going to continue with our cultural placemaking, but with a major focus on the creative industries. Now, we'll continue to prioritise the regeneration of the city centre with a major new commitment. We mentioned this earlier on about major housing delivery in the and working with Homes England in that regard. So we have got at least 1 election to get through in the next couple of months, hopefully 2 in one day, but you know. But we have one message, which is that the future in Plymouth is going to be thrilling. There are very few cities that can boast 2.5 billion pounds worth of defence investment, £1 billion of regeneration, and 200 million of economic development projects over the next few years. Great things happen in Plymouth when Labour is in power. And as I say, nothing happens by accidents. It happens because good people give good advice upon which we make good decisions. None of it's easy. And what I would say is that we've done this because, unlike the Conservatives at local and national level, we're fighting for every pound, not fighting each other. So I hope everybody can look forward to seeing the impact that a Labour-controlled City Council can bring. So I would like now to thank you all for that, and I'm going to go to a couple of Cabinet member updates now. I've got Tom Bryersdale, if I haven't shot all his foxes and stolen all his thunder, and Mary Aspinall.
Not quite. There's one that I've already touched upon in previous cabinet meetings on the Right Stuff, Right Bin campaign, which is all about improving the city's recycling rate. So last time I spoke about the social media campaign, which has continued, and we're now around the 100,000 people mark for impressions on social media graphics to do with recycling. But the newest thing that people in this room who live in Plymouth will have seen, so maybe not Johnny Mercer, for instance, is that throughout households they're receiving a leaflet which has tips and hints around how to make the most of recycling bins. So there's huge issues with people putting the wrong thing in the wrong bins. We know there's a thirst there to do it right, but you won't believe, for instance, how many dirty nappies end up in recycling bins, and then staff at Chelsea Meadow having to sort through that, and it leads to significant issues. So hopefully that will improve understanding of what can go in there, and people will learn some interesting information. But the next stage of that is also around stickers that are going to go on bins as well, just to make sure this is right at the front of people's minds whenever they use either their green or brown bins. So hopefully, as that continues over the next few months, we'll start to see an impact on the recycling rate as well. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And washing the containers, are you going to tell them about having to do that, or do they not have to do that?
So some of that's included as part of the campaign.
Excellent, right, excellent, thank you. Mary and Chris also would like to say something.
Leader, I announced on Friday's budget meeting that we were able, our social care side of things, were able to make sure that our people who contracted with us were able to pay the national living wage, and we gave them the update to that. We've also now got letters going out to all our suppliers in the domiciliary market about the provision of the contract for this coming year and what those costs will be and what we will be paying. So hopefully they will be happy, because it's certainly a very reasonable rise. So they should be getting their letters soon, and certainly we hope there will be some smiley faces. Emma, would you say? Fingers crossed. Okay, so that's good news, because they've got this settlement now, so that they know how they can plan for their coming year. So that's got to be good. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Mary. And Chris.
Thank you, Leader. Earlier on I was talking about the stick that we use on empty homes. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about carrots, two of which we're not changing, but the third of one has grown somewhat. So we offer an empty homes financial assistance package to owners of properties that have been empty for at least 6 months, where we will lend up to £50,000 per unit, repaid from rental income, providing that the homeowner does all of the work themselves. So if you own an empty home, we're putting our money where our mouth is. We've worked with the Auction House Southwest, so that referrals from our empty homes team to their sales service actually get reduced rates of commission to encourage people to sell houses. But what I'd really like to talk to today about is our repair and rent scheme. Now, this is a scheme for landlords who don't really feel they know how to cope with getting rid of their house. It needs work doing on it, and it's beyond them to deal with. It had been that if you had that sort of empty home, you needed to have owned it for a year, and we provide you up to a £20,000 package, 10% of which, 20% of which was grant and the rest interest-free loan, on the basis that the programme would be scoped and managed by Plymouth Homes for Let, who would then let the home at local housing allowance rate and collect the rent and pay the loan back to the council from the rent. I'm really aware that the world has changed somewhat and £20,000 might not be enough. And why are we asking someone to have that house sitting empty for a year when it becomes long-term empty at 6 months? So last week, I was really pleased as part of Empty Homes Week to say that repair and rent is now eligible for any home that has been empty for 6 months on the basis of it being programme managed by Plymouth Homes for Let, and that they would then let at a local housing allowance rate. And we have upped the available money from £20,000 to £50,000, but still with 20% of that available as a grant. It does mean our recycling pot will go down a bit faster, but hopefully it will mean we can get some more empty homes into the private rented sector, but at the local housing allowance, which is the amount that is affordable on benefits. So really targeting the private rented sector for families in receipt of benefit. So that's a real positive of an initiative that we're not waiting to put in the Plan for Homes activity pot. We're starting it now, and it's available now to anyone who owns an empty home that might like it all managed for them, including the repair work. So that was it, Leader.
And any more on the announcements? You're okay? I just wanted to move on to item 20 in that case, which is the LGA update. I mean, the work has been dominated the last couple of weeks about the pre-budget prep. Been a lot of lobbying going on. You'll know that there was some success before the spring, before the budget statement, about £500 or £600 million when we had a gap of £4 billion, and for that, we've all got to produce productivity plans. This is from perhaps the most unproductive government that we've had for probably 30 or 40 years, but never mind, this is what we've got to do. That's in addition to our own individual special attention. But I think it's fair to say that Sean Davis, the LGA chair, played a blinder. He did a 12-hour marathon stint on the day of the announcement on a variety of media, putting the case for local government, welcoming household support fund, which you've got to do, but as Chris was saying, 6 months, you said it too, 6 months is, ridiculous. And what we need to do is, if they're going to do it for 6 months, is have something a bit more sustainable going forward. The interesting stuff about, we're getting some counters in the media at the moment about the amount of extra money that there was. Nobody seems to have been mentioning the fact that all of this local services grant disappeared. I mean, everybody had a massive cut. We did. We had a cut of getting on for £2 million in local services grant. It was disappointing to see that. I think the other thing that Sean kept mentioning was it's really hard. I mean, how they do it at national level, I don't know, but at local level, this is the 6th year in a row that we've had a 1-year funding settlement. I mean, how on earth are you supposed to plan services? I mean, we spend, I don't know what the gross budget of the council is at the moment. I could keep asking different people and get different answers, but it's a lot of money. 500 million. It's 500 million, at least. Planning that on an annual basis is ridiculous. And, you know, we need an urgent return to this, because, I mean, basically, it's a, you mentioned carrots and sticks. I mean, it is, you know, it's crazy that the government want to treat local government in this way when we provide so many of the services that the public value the most. The other thing that went pretty much unmentioned in the budget statement, because it was almost as if it wasn't happening, is that 1 in 5 councils believe that they'll be issuing Section 114 notices in the next 2 years. Now, it's not bankruptcy, but it is an indication that the funding for local government is precarious, and a lot of those essential services, if they go under, will actually have a deleterious effect on other public services. We've rehearsed in here a number of times about the relationship between adult social care and health, for example, and how precarious that all is. You know, the government keeps asking us to do more for less. I mean, local government is already the most efficient part of public service, of the public sector. And after 14 long years of being hollowed out, there's not much more that we can do in that regard. And the reason for that is, you know, councils have lost 24% of their core spending power since 2010. New funds for local authorities are being eclipsed by rises in statutory minimum wage. We all welcome the rises there, but it's got to be funded. And that gap, you know, will rise to something like 1.6 billion in 24-25, going up even further in further future years. 2/3 of councils are warning that neighbourhood services, including waste collection, road repairs, libraries, leisure centres, are likely to see severe cutbacks across the country because of this. Cost and demand pressures have added 15 billion to the cost of delivering council services just in the last 4 years. And almost 2/3 of spending for councils with social care responsibilities was spent on services for adults and children alone, up from 56.5% just again 7 years ago. So, you know, it is getting harder and harder and harder for us to provide the 300 services that we do provide with our other obligations. But we're not alone in this council. Nationally, local government is in a bit of a bad way. And I say this again, we need a change. We need change. We need a government that's committed to properly funding public services. The current government are only offering more austerity, more of the same going forward, and we need a change. Because if local government collapses, all of the public services are going to go south, and that needs to be understood just how pivotal our role is. So we're here, I know, for people to take a pot shot at, because there's a general election on. People will go back to sleep after the general election, I'm sure, and won't mention us again till the next time. But please stop bashing local government. Most of the services you rely on in your town or in your city or in your village actually depend upon local authorities being up the mark and being able to deliver. So it's time to stop whining at us and start doing something for us. Right, so I'll see you next Monday, which is a morning session, unusually for us, where we've got a couple of big items that we've hinted at today. And then we'll all be together again for a little council meeting, which is the last one before the local elections. I'm hoping, against hope, it'll be the last one before the general election. I don't know whether I've mentioned it, but we need a general election. We need a change. And hopefully we'll get one soon. All the best to you. Thanks to the officers and everybody here for their contributions. Goodbye.